All right, today we're going to talk about a classic engineering nightmare. You might have heard of it, maybe even lived through it. It's called death by traffic. And more importantly, we're going to look at the one critical tool you absolutely need in your arsenal to stop it from ever happening.
Okay, so just imagine this for a second. You did it. You built this amazing API. It's beautiful, it's clean, it's fast, and it actually solves a real problem. You push it live, and for that one glorious moment, everything is just perfect.
And then, chaos. Out of absolutely nowhere, a tidal wave of requests just slams into your system. And that smooth, efficient service you were so proud of, yeah, it's buckling. You can almost hear it groaning under the pressure.
Next thing you know, your servers, the very heart of your application, they start to fail. They just can't keep up with the load. They're completely overwhelmed, spitting out errors left and right, and then just grinding to a halt.
You look over at your monitoring dashboard. You know, the one that was all green and happy just a few minutes ago? Well, now it's lit up like a Christmas tree from hell. It's just a sea of red alerts, and every single one is screaming that your system is sinking, and sinking fast. So what on earth went wrong?
It's actually pretty simple. You built this incredible, exclusive nightclub, but you forgot to hire a bouncer. You just left the front door wide open, and now the party's completely out of control. Well, in the world of APIs, that bouncer has a name. It's called a rate limiter.
See, without that bouncer, your API basically becomes the Wild West. It's just a chaotic free-for-all where a handful of troublemakers can ruin the experience for absolutely everyone. So let's meet these troublemakers, shall we?
And here's the thing. Not all of these troublemakers are actually malicious. First, you've got the accidental attacker. This could be a totally well-meaning developer whose buggy script gets caught in an infinite loop and just starts hammering your service by mistake. Then there's the resource hog. Think of a single user, maybe a competitor, scraping your entire database, just sucking up all your resources. And finally, you have the classic malicious actor, the hacker who's deliberately trying to take you down with a denial of service attack.
And look, the cost of this kind of failure, it is not trivial. We're talking about real money. A major e-commerce platform once lost an estimated $150 million in sales from a 3-hour outage. And the cause? A single client sending way too many requests. So you see, this isn't just a tech problem. It is a massive, massive business risk.
Okay, so it's pretty clear. We need to take back control. It's time to hire that bouncer and bring some order to the chaos. And that brings us right to the business case for doing this.
So what is rate limiting really? Well, at its core, it's basically a traffic cop for your API. It's just a set of rules, a speed limit, that says how many requests a user can send in a certain amount of time. And if someone breaks that speed limit, the bouncer politely, or, not so politely, shows them the door by hitting them with that famous 429 too many requests error.
And this isn't just about playing defense. It's about being smart with your business. For one, cost control. Rate limiting stops your cloud bill from exploding into a million pieces. It also guarantees a better quality of service because it stops one problem user from wrecking the experience for everyone else. It can even be a huge deal for compliance in certain industries. And, maybe most importantly, it protects your revenue by letting you actually enforce the limits between your free and premium tiers.
Okay, so we're all agreed we need a bouncer. But what kind of bouncer are we hiring? Turns out there are a few different types, or algorithms, and each one has its own special skills. So first up, let's talk about the token bucket. And the best way to think about this one is like a coffee shop punch card.
The logic here is super simple. Every user gets a bucket with a certain number of tokens in it. Every time they make an API call, it costs 1 token. Meanwhile, the bucket is slowly refilling at a nice, steady rate. So if a user is quiet for a while, they save up tokens, which means they can make a sudden burst of requests later on. This is awesome for user experience, right? It feels super responsive. But here's the catch. A really big sudden burst can still overwhelm your back end. So it's great, but it's not a silver bullet.
All right, next up we have the leaky bucket algorithm. Now, if the token bucket was all about spending tokens, the leaky bucket is all about draining water. Just picture a bathtub with a small, steady drain at the bottom.
So with this approach, all incoming requests get poured into a queue. That's our bathtub. Then, the system processes those requests from the queue at a constant fixed rate. That's the leak. Now, if requests come pouring in too fast and the bathtub overflows, those new requests are just dropped on the floor. This is a brilliant way to protect a really sensitive service, like a database, because you're guaranteeing it only ever sees a smooth, predictable stream of traffic. The downside, of course, is that legitimate bursts of traffic either get delayed or just plain denied.
Okay, now for one of the simplest methods out there, the fixed window counter. I like to think of this one like a monthly gym membership. It doesn't matter when you go, as long as you don't go more times than your pass allows for that month. All you do is split time into fixed chunks or windows, let's say 1 hour. You just count the requests that come in during that hour. If the user hits their limit, you just deny any more requests until the next hour starts, when the counter resets back to 0. Super simple, right? And very memory efficient. But, and this is a big but, it has a fatal flaw called the boundary problem. Think about it. A user could send their entire hourly quota at 1:59 p.m. and then send their entire quota again at 2:01 p.m. Bam! They've just doubled their effective rate and completely bypassed your limit.
So that boundary problem is a real killer. How do we fix it? Well, we can use something called the sliding window log. And to get your head around this, think about your Netflix viewing history. Netflix doesn't care what you watched on Tuesday. It cares what you've watched in the last 24 hours.
This algorithm is basically brute force perfection. What it does is store a timestamp for every single request. When a new request comes in, it just counts how many timestamps are in the last rolling window, say the last 60 seconds. It is perfectly 100% accurate. It completely solves the boundary problem. So what's the catch? Well, the trade-off is massive. It's incredibly expensive. Storing a timestamp for every single request at scale, that's going to eat up a truly insane amount of memory.
And that massive cost brings us to our final strategy, which is a hybrid solution that really tries to give us the best of both worlds. It's called the sliding window counter. A good way to think of this is like a smart thermostat. It doesn't log every tiny temperature change, but it uses the data from the recent past to make a really intelligent estimate. So what this algorithm does is cleverly approximate the rate. It keeps a counter for the current time window and the previous one. Then, to figure out the rate right now, it uses a weighted average of both counters. It basically gives you a very, very accurate estimate of the true rate, but without that insane memory cost of logging every single request. Now, it's a little more complex to implement for sure, but it's a really elegant and powerful compromise.
Okay, so we've met 5 different kinds of bouncers, and each one has its own personality, right? So which one do you actually hire to protect your system? Well, the answer, as it so often is it depends. It depends entirely on what you're trying to protect.
And this really breaks it down for you. If what you're protecting is a sensitive database that absolutely cannot handle traffic spikes, you need the leaky bucket. It gives you that steady, predictable outflow. But if you're protecting a user-facing API and you want it to feel snappy and responsive, you go with the token bucket because it allows for those bursts. And finally, if you're dealing with something mission-critical, like financial transactions where every single request has to be accounted for, well, then you pay the price for perfection and you use the sliding window log.
So, there you have it. That's the architecture of control. You now know the different strategies, the different bouncers you can hire to keep chaos away from your door. But, knowing the logic, that's the easy part. The real challenge is turning that knowledge into code that actually works. So, the question is, are you ready to hire your bouncer?